Councilmember Jaxi,
Here.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Here.
Councilmember Edens,
Here.
Councilmember Bros,
Here.
Councilmember Garitano,
Here.
Councilmember Flasher,
Here.
Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Here.
Councilmember Farmer, Councilmember Nyan, Councilmember Bartoni,
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
All right, welcome everyone. Good to see you. Before we get into action items, I believe we have 12 items under information. Is there anything under information that any member of the council would like to discuss or about which you may have questions? Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yeah, I just wanted to actually have it about the budget and the goals. And I mentioned this during committee meeting, but we should probably remove the line item for Tough Mudder. There's been no expenditures for quite some time. And I still saw that in the last copy that we had. And then I also noticed that the safety improvements for Pine Grover Parkway and Fullerton Meadows is scheduled for 2024. And since it is a safety issue, I'd like to see it moved up to 2022.
So the second one, my recollection is that the council approved the dates for everything. Is that correct? Targeted. Okay, so that would need to take a vote of the council on the second one.
Okay.
The first one, City Administrator Cross.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We haven't made the changes to the budget. We have a public hearing coming up, and so we're accumulating all these changes. There's several others. So we've got that noted about removing Tough Mudder and several other things. So we'll do that when we then 2 weeks hence or whenever we do the public hearing, the first, yes. And so those changes will be made then. But thank you for the reminder. I appreciate that.
And then somewhat related, I have a question about the roundabout. We were doing some study because the citizens come from that noise. And someone on that, the question is around council had a study around that.
Rick Brown, are you with us?
See there?
I am here, Mr. Mayor. I could not hear a word, unfortunately. I think Mrs. McCutcheon.
The question from Councilmember McCutcheon is any update on the sound studies in relative to the roundabouts on 109? Actually.
I know Joe has been primarily dealing with that topic. I don't believe we have anything going relative to 109. I know Joe had Dr. Thunder helping out relative to that issue. He may want to respond to where that stands.
Mr. Mayor, with your permission.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Thank you. Ms. McCutcheon, we'll have something at committee at its November meeting.
And then relative to the item that you brought up, Councilor McCutcheon, as to moving the target date that was approved by the council in the strategic plan, did you want to make a motion to do that now or? Okay. Well, yeah, so after the public hearing, you would need to do it here because it's not on the council agenda. It's only on the work session. Okay, and for recollection, for everyone's benefit.
Can we repeat the motion?
Please.
I move that we move the funding for the safety improvements on Pine Grover Parkway and Fullerton Meadows from budget year 2024 to 2022.
And for everyone's benefit, do we have the number, the cost for that, the dollar amount that would be moved?
I think it's 50,000.
Go ahead, sure.
Councilmember McCutcheon, are we in the 5-year capital plan? Is this the document you're referring to?
I
Or
do,
are you referring to the strategic plan? I'm trying to
the budget document.
The budget document, the 5-year capital improvement, okay?
Mhm.
So looking at that, you're under roadway improvements,
I forgot it. I left my copy at home. I'm sorry.
okay? I'm trying to figure out what, where you're looking at, so,
We're not at the budget stage yet.
no, we really aren't.
Um,
I thought it was on, it's on information items.
Yes.
Okay, so so can you direct me to which line item you're speaking of? There's a small roadway improvement projects for 50,000.
That's not it.
Okay, that is not it, because you said 50,
That's what as I recall, it's 50, but I don't.
okay. I'm looking down the line here to see if I see what your Pond Grover,
Thank you.
okay, I see.
Hold on.
I see. So Pond Grover Parkway, Fulton Meadows, Median Islands design, and then construction. Is that what you're,
Yes,
so the design is in 2024 for 50,000, construction is in 2025 for 375,000. That's what you're referring to?
Let's just hold that for 1 second.
Yes, sir.
Rick Brown, you had your hand up. You wanted to say something?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I was just going to point out that same budget item that Steve found in the capital improvement budget.
So what you're referring to is the budget, not the strategic plan.
correct.
And the budget has yet to be, I think this is just for information, kind of where things are, but at the
Yeah.
moment, but it has yet to be presented formally to the council, which is going to occur at an upcoming meeting. So I would suggest that that motion isn't right at the moment, but when the
Okay.
budget gets presented, it would be right for presentation.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, Councilman Garitano, you're good. All right. Anything else from anyone under information items? Councilmember Clark?
Just had a question about the budget. I did not see, and it could be just because I overlooked it, but a budget item on there for the adding Braille to the signs, and that's on our strategic plan to be done in the end of 2021, and to look at ASL interpreter by I think second quarter of 2022. But did I overlook that line item?
If that's for signs, that'd be under public works, that would be. Built that into the budget.
Sure. Rick, did you hear that question?
I heard the question, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't sure that I heard Mr. Cross's response.
Well, he's wanting your response.
Um,
Do you recall?
As far as providing signs, I don't believe, Joe's got his hand up. I'm going to defer to Joe on this, if that's okay.
Okay, we'll go to Mr. Vintage.
Again, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry for having to raise my hand. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, in the capital improvements program for 2022, there is a line item that basically describes capital improvements and equipment. And the intent of the department was to purchase those signs that would have Braille out of that particular line item. And I believe it's funded at about $50,000 for 2022. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councilmember Clark?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Anything else from any member of the council under Councilmember Clark?
Sorry.
Sorry.
Yes, for under the prime place. I just was wondering what plan we have for working on the accessible parking spaces. I know that there were going to be some changes made from the drawings that we have, but I just was wondering if we're going to look at each one of those parking areas as separate parking lots and adjust the number of parking places because of that.
Mr. Vinich, do you know the answer to that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you again. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, the intent is to provide, for the most part, 3 locations where accessible parking will be available. There is accessible parking on Main Street. There is ample accessible parking on the off-site cross-parking area with the theater. The area that is shy, in the opinion of the department, and it was part of its report that was prepared by the site plan subcommittee, is in the vicinity of the residential building. And I believe Mr. Kennedy, the developer, is working on that, hopefully as we speak.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything further from any member of the council under informational items? All right, seeing none, we're going to go to action items. First one is from the Department of Planning concerning the bid results for the Birch Forest Drive turnaround. Mr. Vinich.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. And with your permission, Mr. Mayor, I think Mr. Newberry will share a screen real quickly here. Well, maybe not as quickly as I thought, but Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, this particular project has been under discussion for at least 2 years, or shortly after the villages at Brightleaf began development. Initially, Birch Forest Drive was to be only used for emergency purposes, and the existing temporary cul-de-sac, which is shown in the hatched light green color, sorry, Mr. Mayor, was to be retained. As time went on and the development of the villages at Brightleaf occurred, it became apparent that the current situation was not satisfactory, particularly regarding emergency access. Ultimately, a decision was made by City Council, and through the process of the Planning and Parks Committee, a design was settled on to create a T turnaround. That is represented on the plan that's on your screens and provided as part of the committee's report. Ultimately, this particular project was funded for 2021. The bidding process was managed by the Department of Public Works, and the results of the bidding process had 8 contractors submit bids for consideration. One of those bids met all of the requirements and was substantially lower than the budgeted price, but consistent with the engineer's estimate that prepared the plans. The Planning and Parks Committee considered this particular item at its October 19, 2021 meeting and endorsed proceeding forward with KJ Understall as the contractor of choice for the installation of the T turnaround retaining wall and other ancillary items in support of such. The amount of the bid is just under $78,300. The 2021 Capital Improvements Program has $100,000 available, and some of that extra $22,000 plus will go toward landscaping. But tonight, the committee is presenting for consideration the winning bid, so to speak, from KJ Understall, and the department would respectfully request authorization to prepare legislation for the contract with the selected contractor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Joe, or would someone like to make a motion? Councilor Bertolino.
Move that we adopt the recommendation.
And it's seconded by Councilor McCutcheon. Any discussion on the motion? Councilor Bartoni.
Joe, at the committee meeting, we had asked if the city has used KJ Understall or not. Did you find out if this was the same company that we're familiar with or a different company?
I was unable to talk to our street superintendent, so with some luck tonight, maybe Mr. Brown is familiar with them.
Thank you, Joe. I have not done a project, so I'm not familiar with this contractor before. I believe it will be a first time for us, quite frankly. So, but it was a good bid, and it did meet the requirements of the project.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Councilmember Edens.
I'm just wondering if when and if the council does this, that we we'll have an understanding going forward that other substreets that were never connected, that do not have room for any turnaround at all, will be now eligible for funding and to receive one.
Okay, what was that again? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Is this better if I lean in more? Okay. I was just wondering if this implies a policy that other areas in the subdivision or other subdivisions in the city will be eligible for turnarounds as well if they were substreets that weren't ever extended. I asked this because I've got a few, so I'm wondering if this opens up a can of worms, so to speak, or if this is a one-time only deal. Because it affects how I vote.
Yeah, I'll defer to, I guess, Director Vinich on that. I mean, I think each case stands on its own one way or the other. I wouldn't interpret this, if it were me, as giving precedent either direction, but Mr. Vinich, do you want to comment on that?
Mr. Mayor, I would concur with your assessment and just add one point. The component that makes this different than many others is the fact that we had intended emergency access through the existing Birch Forest Drive, and the design didn't work as well as the engineer that prepared it for the developers. And so I see this as kind of a unique situation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anything further on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion to proceed with the drafting of legislation pursuant to the recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Moving next to Wayfair legislation that would need to be on the municipal election ballot. Mr. Cross, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Mr. Mayor and members of council, you hopefully read my cover memo with regards to putting this item on the April 5th, 2022 ballot. Most municipalities are in fact doing that, and there'll be a coordinated effort through many of the municipalities in and around Wildwood. In addition to St. Louis County having its own initiative on their ballot. So should we desire to go forward and put that on the ballot, we would ask Mr. Young to prepare legislation to do that. There is some suggested verbiage that every municipality is using, and there will be actually I think we spoke before about a coordinated effort to do that, so that the city would not be expending its own funds. In fact, the city can't really advocate for that. You can't do that. It's against Missouri statutes to do so, but there would be a coordinated effort through the Missouri Municipal League as well as the Metro League of St. Louis to do that. So as I said in the cover memo, this it is equal to what your current tax rate is. In the city of Wildwood, the current tax rate is 0.5% for the capital improvement sales tax. So that would be the rate, which would generate somewhere around $2 million. That is estimated right now. The difficulty in estimating what that exact amount might be is because you don't know what this is based on online sales. And so it's a guess of how many households are in the city. It is a guess of how much purchases are made through brick and mortar versus online sales, and then applying that 0.5 sales tax. But the closest that we can come based on some reasonable estimates, it'd be about $2 million. So what we would be asking for is for the approval to go forward and prepare the legislation so that then we could have that on the April 5th, 2022 ballot.
Just a couple of things before I get to Councilmembers Garitano and Bertolino. If this is not on the ballot, then the city would not be able to collect the tax. And secondly, for anyone who may be watching, in essence, what this tax does is to recoup what the city is not getting from purchases that are made online that would otherwise, for example, be made at Wildwood businesses where it would recoup that. Councilor Garitano.
And thank you. And City Administrator Cross covered this really well. I was just going to say that this will help level the playing field for those small businesses, the brick and mortar businesses here in our city, while restoring that revenue that we were collecting when shoppers were just going to brick and mortar, but now have shifted some of their shopping to online. So with that, I'll make that motion for preparation of legislation.
Here we have a motion to prepare the legislation, have it placed on the April ballot, seconded by, I'm sorry, is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilmember Rambo. Councilor Bertolino on the motion.
Yes, just my ignorance, Steve, but how is this collected? I mean, how is this actually tracked and collected?
I believe this is collected through the state and then remitted to the municipality.
I don't know how the state does it either, but that's okay.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Yes, I've got a concern regarding the timing of putting any kind of a tax proposal on the April ballot at this point in time. And it's simply because if we take a look at economic conditions around us, life has become very difficult from an economic standpoint since the beginning of the year. All we have to do is read the news reports and we see that inflation is at a 40-year high. Gas taxes are up 40 to 50% nationwide. If we take a look in particular here at the state of Missouri, the state of Missouri enacted a pretty substantial gasoline tax increase just within the last 12 months. Recently, St. Louis Community College saw the approval of a tax increase for their funding as well. You know, if we take a look at the impact that inflation's had on residents and consumers, it's doing two things. It's pushing people into higher tax brackets. And also, since the beginning of this year, for the last 8 months, the average consumer has seen their actual purchasing power decline. So I'm concerned that the city council is putting itself in a position of advocating for something that may add one more straw to the proverbial camel's back in terms of making life even more difficult, especially for those on the lower ends of the economic ladder, people in the lower middle class, people in the lower class that are struggling each month to make their rent payments, that are struggling each month, maybe senior citizens to pay their prescription drug costs and to pay their utility bills. Also for that lower middle class family that may be struggling to decide, what do I do? Do we get the car fixed, or do we pay tuition for our child to finish their college degree? So this tax increase, proposed tax increase, may seem insignificant to most of us because most of us are from upper middle class backgrounds, maybe some of us for upper class backgrounds, but for many, many people out there within our city, any kind of a tax increase at all, considering the current economic environment, could seem pretty significant.
Okay, thank you. And I just asked the city attorney, do you have the answer yet, or do you want me to? Okay. I've asked him, he's going to get us an answer as to whether there's any choice for the council relative to putting it on an April ballot versus another date. And he's going to give us that answer, hopefully momentarily. Councilmember Roast, while we're waiting on that.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's relating to what John's researching now, but I guess my question is, are we putting it on the ballot so we have the ability to collect it? Because it's going to be charged. Is that correct at the state level?
The process, with your permission, the process is that the businesses, the online businesses that will charge the tax, they will collect the tax, they will then remit it to the state, and then the state then will turn around and remit it to the municipality where that product was shipped.
I think his question is if we don't
pass it, then we don't get the tax. I mean,
is the consumer still being charged or not?
Yeah.
I believe that's probably true, yes, but we won't get it because the voters didn't pass it. So yes, they'll still be charged because that's what was signed into law in the summer. Now, in terms of timing, the April election was, I guess, the Metro League of St. Louis, the Municipal League has decided that would be the time to do it. And that's why I was trying to answer his question about timing.
Well, that's a legal question.
That's fine.
All right. Councilor Bertolino. Okay, Councilmember Galani.
Yeah, I was going to, I agree with Scott's, perception regarding the timing. If that is, if we're imposing a tax, I think this isn't probably the best time to do it. But I guess the clarification we need then, because that's a big deal, right? I mean, if the vendor is going to be charging the consumer regardless, and they're going to be paying this tax regardless, then what really are we voting on as far as collecting it? Because what are we passing? I mean, it seems to me that it would be if somebody purchased an item in Wildwood and Wildwood had not passed the Wayfair tax, then the consumer wouldn't pay that tax if they were in Wildwood versus Ballwood. If they're going to pay it anyway, then I guess we're not really voting on anything, because it's obviously we want to get it in our hands if it's going to the state hands regardless, but I think that needs to be clarified. And then the other point I just wanted to make, which I mean, I don't know, I might be in left field here with it, but I have a hard time understanding how this levels the playing field when it comes to online purchases versus in-store purchases. Because I know I can speak for my wife, who does way too much online shopping, but I don't think there's ever a situation where there's a conscious decision made that I'm going to purchase this online when I could go to a local Wildwood. I mean, I don't think Wildwood has the retail infrastructure to really make a determination. I mean, when people need groceries, most people are going to Deerbergs or Schnucks, but we've got a few boutique retailers when it comes to jewelry and clothes. But I think the people that are shopping online today are going to continue shopping online today. And whether they're paying a little bit of a 0.5% tax or not isn't going to sway them to go back to shopping in a brick and mortar environment. I think it's more so just a way for us to call it what it is. We just want our piece of the pie, if that's what we think it is. We're not really leveling any playing field with anybody or changing anybody's mind with how they're going to shop or what they're going to do. That's just my opinion.
Councilor Garitano.
Yeah, just wanted to add a couple of comments here. So Missouri was the last state to pass Wayfair legislation. We actually were down to 2 states, Florida and Missouri, and Florida passed it earlier this year. So we were behind on that. Every state has passed Wayfair legislation, and it's named after the Wayfair court case. With regards to the timing, there is an effort that municipalities throughout the state are targeting to put this on the ballot in April because it passed just recently. And so therefore April presents the next best opportunity to put it on the ballot for cities to collect. And therefore the timing is that we can benefit from that communication, that messaging, if we go in coordination with all the cities throughout that are putting it on the ballot. Let's see, what's the other item? As far as the leveling the playing field, think of it as tax that we used to collect, because at one point before online shopping became prevalent, people shopped in stores and they paid that tax. But because they moved to online and the pandemic accelerated some of that, we have now lost that tax. We don't collect it anymore because now the online vendor is selling the product. And so therefore, the brick and mortar store is at a disadvantage right now because they have to pay the tax. But if you buy online, the online vendor from out of state does not have to pay it. Now, in Wildwood, while our business community may be small, remember too that in Wildwood, we collect as part of the pool tax throughout the county. So our shoppers, when they go, whether it's Deerbergs or Walmart in the Valley or Target in Town and Country, those taxes, when they're in a pool city, get collected and redistributed to us. And we have seen over time that the tax revenues coming in from that sales tax, they haven't been as strong as they used to be. And we've attributed one of those reasons that people are going online, and hence why the projection is $2 million. So that's it. One question for clarification. If Wildwood would not collect it, then it would not be collected for the city. The state would still get their portion, the county will still get their portion. But Wildwood gets that very fraction of a percent. I don't know the exact number for us, maybe you might know, but that we wouldn't get that. So that's what I have for you.
Okay, thank you. And then just for information, I did get from our city attorney, and he can elaborate if he wants. The two issues that have been raised so far, number one, timing of the ballot. It can be on any ballot. There's not a ballot date. There's not a time limitation or a requirement that it be in April, just for your information. On that. Go ahead.
Thank you. With regards to putting it on the ballot, if we join with other municipalities across the state, then we share in that cost, which with everybody doing it or putting it on the April ballot, it basically would cost the city nothing to do that. If we go on a different ballot, an August ballot or a November ballot, and we're the only ones there, then we're paying for the full vote, and that's about a
We
$30,000.
aren't paying anything for. We can't pay anything for this either way. The city can't. We would. I think what he means to say is we would get the benefit of, if it's on the April ballot, 2022, we would get the benefit of whatever.
No, that's how I'm saying that if we put a ballot measure on the ballot and we're the only ones that have that, that's a $30,000.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So his point is, if we put it, well, that's true unless it's on the municipal ballot. So if it's on the municipal ballot, that cost is incurred anyway. If we put it on a different ballot, for example, like August, November,
correct,
then we would incur the cost of the ballot measure. So like to St. Louis County, which is, I think, probably 20 to 30,000, my recollection.
Right.
So there is, so the city administrator's point is there is benefit from a cost saving standpoint to the city, not in promoting or speaking against the tax itself, just in the timing of when that is done. Any municipal election versus any other election date, it's cheaper to do it on a municipal election date because we already have all the machines here because we're having a municipal election. Whereas we don't do that otherwise. Everyone understand that part. Okay, thank you for that information. And then relative to the second question about whether this tax is being collected or not, the city attorney's indicated that it is being collected only if whomever is making an online purchase fills out a volunteer form or some mechanism to do that. Otherwise, it is not, which I would say, is that a fair statement?
Yeah, currently pursuant to state law, if you are making online purchases of equaling $2,000 or more annually, you're supposed to be self-reporting payment of use tax.
Yes.
Okay, so that is the instance where it is being paid. And when it is being paid, the state is collecting it. We arguably would be entitled to part of that, and we're not getting it. Where it is not being paid, obviously, no one is getting it. So somewhat of a detailed answer and convoluted to the question, but nevertheless, we now have the facts. Councilmember, thank you, City Attorney, for that. Councilmember Ottenberg.
Yes, I know that it's, I've heard several people, Mr. Mayor, refer to this proposed tax as recovering lost revenue. But I think we should stop and think for a moment that if this legislation makes it onto the ballot and if it passes, people are actually going to see a tax increase. When people started conducting more commerce over the internet, they in a sense realized a tax cut, and putting this legislation on the ballot, if it passes, we are essentially endorsing repealing that tax cut. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Flasher.
Yeah, it's brought to my attention here that Chesterfield and Ellisville have already both passed this. So, I mean, local communities are passing this as well. So we wouldn't be like, we're just doing something that nobody else locally is doing. And this is stuff that could go towards anything, roads, whatever it is.
Councilmember Clark.
Yeah, just a quick question. And I may not, it might not be relevant, but if we put this on April, and if Watershed Erosion still wants to bring a tax in for their work, I don't know if that's still on the table, but it's not. Okay. Well, if there was another one, if somebody else, another group says, okay, we want to have another tax. And if they come back and say they want to do this, having two on there, is that going to make people look at it and go, oh, they're wanting so much tax from me and not understand? May not
That
make
would
it.
probably depend on the person. Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yeah, us putting it on the ballot with the residents the opportunity to decide, do they want to move forward with it? So it's not necessarily that.
Councilmember Rose. Councilmember Rose.
Yeah, I guess I'm still confused. This tax, are we voting to what, to have additional tax or just to collect a portion of what would go to the state?
It depends on how you define it. It is now voluntary for people making online purchases. And we are not collecting it. If this is on the ballot and the voters approve it, it would become mandatory.
I mean, it's going to be collected as you purchase versus that voluntary form.
Correct. And it would be mandatory. So there would be no more voluntary.
But if we don't put it on our ballot, at the state level, it's still being collected.
And we will not collect it, whether it is, even if it's, even if, for people who do it voluntarily.
So we could, the tax to our residents is going to happen. The question is are we going to get a portion of it?
No. The tax would remain voluntary for Wildwood residents. Is that correct?
Except as applied to the state or county. State and county will now be collected.
So it'd be a very small portion of that.
So let's explore that for a moment. City Attorney Young, is it the case that regardless of what Wildwood does, the state of Missouri and the county are going to collect this tax? Is that fair?
If the county tax proposition passes, the answer is yes.
What about the state?
The state has already approved it.
Okay. And so in that event, is it the case that monies paid to the state, if Wildwood does not pass this, will just be held with the state and Wildwood will not get them?
That is correct.
Thank you. Just, sorry. Councilmember Hopper.
Just a clarification. So I just want to make sure that I think we're all on kind of the same lines of being confused there. So the money being collected by the money being collected from the consumer, they're going to pay the same amount of tax one way or the other. And it's either going to all go to the state or then part of that is going to come to us. Or is that, so if I'm buying something of $10 and the tax is $5, one way or the other, right? And if we can either, the customer is going to pay that $5 no matter what in tax. And basically what we're voting on is whether we're going to get our $1 out of that $5. I know those numbers are way off, but like, just for a rationalization standpoint, are we going to get that $1? So now the state gets 4 and we get 1. And then if we don't vote it, then the state just keeps 5.
Okay, the city attorney will explain that. Go ahead, city attorney.
If the city passes a use tax and the voters approve it, it will be an additional percentage added, just like the city sales tax. It's an additional percentage. So no, the amount collected will not be the same if the city forgoes having a use tax.
So then I actually think I misspoke somewhat when I made that statement earlier. So this would be, the state would collect what it's collecting, but it would be more if this passes by the voters. If it's approved by the council, submit to the voters and the voters pass it. Thank you for that clarification. Council member Edens.
Yep. Okay. I'm with you now. Thanks for clarifying and re-clarifying and clarifying. I'm on the logic train, but I just wanted to kind of briefly touch base. Councilmember Garitano said it about the differences between where you geographically need to be to collect a pools tax versus an online sale. So I just wanted to try this. So show of hands, how many people have purchased off of Amazon this last year? Walmart online, Target online, Lowe's, Home Depot, any of the big box stores. So in other words, you ordered from your couch, and I did too, because it's convenient, but you didn't drag your butt down to Chesterfield and purchase it in stores. So if I ordered detergent from Costco and didn't buy it at Town and Country, there's a difference on the tax. So it is actually about leveling the playing field. My consumer habits have changed, especially because of the pandemic, but they were trending that way anyway. And it is a revenue loss. So we've got three main streams of revenues, right? We've got courts, fines, and fees. We've got use like taxes with sales taxes, and we have utilities. And we've lost utility taxes as well because technology's changed, right? We don't tax a data plan, but we still get a tax from landlines. Well, that's changed. Consumer habits have changed, and it's changed too with online habits. And we just showed it with our hands. That's why it's important to acknowledge that with putting this on the ballot.
Okay, so what's your point of information?
Just a point of information, because I think there was an example of what the tax would be. The Wildwood sales tax is it's 1.5 cents. So if a $10 purchase, it's 15 cents. That's the Wildwood portion of the sales tax. So this is what we're talking about. I just want to make sure I'm using the closest numbers to what we have.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we've had a lot of discussion on this. The motion on the floor is for placement of the to have the matter placed on the ballot for the April election. Will there need to be, is this actually to have legislation prepared to do that, or is this, okay. So the motion is to have legislation prepared to do it, not actual placement. That'll come once the legislation, if you pass this, is voted upon. So we'll do a roll call vote on, given the discussion on whether to have legislation prepared to have the Wayfair tax placed on the April 5th, 2022 general municipal election ballot. Please call the roll, Ms. Eldridge.
Councilmember Galani,
No.
Councilmember Hopper,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
No.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nian,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries, so we'll have the legislation prepared for the next council meeting. Moving next and last, we have an executive session. Before we do that, if there's no objection, I'd like to rearrange the agenda and have Mr. Bennett speak to the receipt and file so we can get that out of the way, and maybe he can do what he needs to do, if anything, to prepare for our council meeting that starts momentarily. Anyone object to rearranging the agenda to that extent? All right, seeing none, Mr. Bennett, do you want to say anything about the receipt and file relative to the item coming out of the site plan subcommittee of the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Mr. Mayor, you did a fine summary. All I would say is the site development plan package was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission on October 18th of this month, of this year. And there are a few conditions associated with it, which will be addressed before any construction begins on site. The department's available for any comments or questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Joe relative to the receipt and file, or any comments from any member of the council? Councilmember Rambo.
Yeah, I'll make this real quick. I know we've got a more important item to get to. I'm just concerned about this as one of the last large developments that's going to go in the heart of town center. We have the opportunity to get it right or wrong. I took a cursory look through the documentation. It's hard to read D-size plots on an iPad, so I had trouble seeing a lot of the stuff. But it looks as though we have luminaire style street lamps, which it runs counter to our thoughts of having a better night sky compliant lighting infrastructure in town center. It has the planning number for the runoff is a 20-minute 100-year event. I couldn't find details on what the heck that actually is, but they're going from basically 1% impervious surface to about 3/4 impervious surface on the development as a whole. And it's not clear to me that we've fully analyzed it under our new more rigorous not yet fully developed runoff standards. And I will defer to the P and Z judgment on parking, but the intent is to share the most valuable spots of B and B, and that's where I park when I go to the movies. And I'll no longer be able to park there because residents will be parking there. So I have some concerns. The plan seems to be leaving these things vague for future correction. And I just want to make 100% sure that we're going to address those issues and others. So Joe, can you just reassure me just a little bit?
Well, let me just say one thing before he does that. So this is, I was just speaking with our city attorney. Unlike other items that comes before the council, this cannot be sort of picked up and decided by the council. It's been done by planning and zoning and so forth. It could be reconsidered presumably by the Planning and Zoning Commission, could it not? Yes. Okay, so it could be reconsidered by Planning and Zoning Commission. So Joe, if you want to give us a quick answer on that, but I would suggest that depending on his answer, the course of action would be to speak with Planning and Zoning, maybe come to a meeting for that purpose, talk with the Ward 6 representative, and certainly Councilmember Brost and I are both voting members of that. But my point is, in all this, it's a Planning and Zoning Commission jurisdiction at the moment, not council.
Okay,
This
right.
is just FYI. But let's hear what he has to say.
This is my inexperience hoping to get ahead of what I saw as some potential problems.
Not a
That's all.
problem, and there's a way to do that. I'm just trying to kind of get us. Joe, do you want to answer Councilor Rambo's question?
Mr. Mayor, without any objection from you, I'll be glad to send out an email tomorrow or no later than Wednesday, identifying those points, along with the other few that the Planning and Zoning Commission had regarding its favorable recommendation. That way the council can see them all and know that they'll be addressed according to code.
Perfect.
And that
Great.
may
Thank you.
Vitiate the need to do what I just described, but that's the process if you are not happy with that.
Right. My concern was just we're trying to evolve our codes, and this I'd hate to see this slip under the tent.
We got it.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, so that takes us to executive session. We would need a motion to go into closed session, and that is a roll call matter made by Councilmember Galani, seconded by Councilmember Hopper. Any discussion on the motion for closed session? Seeing no discussion, would you please call the roll, Ms. Eldridge, on the motion to go into closed session?
Councilmember Hopper,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nian,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to go into closed session, which means, unfortunately, particularly for those who just walked in the room, we're going to have to clear the room so we can have a closed session for a few minutes. But we'll save your spot for you. So All right, good evening, everyone. We are going to reconvene the work session following our executive session, and seeing nothing further on the agenda, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the work session of the City Council for this evening. We have a Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember Rambo. It's a non-debatable motion. All in favor of the motion to adjourn the work session, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So we are adjourned, and now we're going to go into the regular meeting of the council. Welcome, everyone. Good to see you here, and those who may be joining us by Zoom to the council meeting for the City of Wildwood for Monday, October 25th, 2021. Ms. Eldridge, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Boland,
Here.
Councilmember Galani,
Here.
Councilmember Hopper,
Here.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Here.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Here.
Councilmember Edens,
Here.
Councilmember Brost,
Here.
Councilmember Garitano, Councilmember Flasher,
Here.
Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Here.
Councilmember Farmer,
Here.
Councilmember Nyan,
Here.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Okay, thank you. For those of you who are comfortably able, if you'd please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes from the council's October 11, 2021 work session and regular meeting. If you have no comments or questions about the minutes, I would entertain a motion to approve them as presented. Made by Councilmember Galani, seconded by Councilmember Dodwell. Any discussion on the motion to approve the minutes? See no discussion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
We have one abstention, Councilmember McCutcheon. Any other abstentions? All right, the motion carries. Next, public participation. Do we have any speaker cards? Ms. Eldridge? Travis, anyone indicated online they want to speak?
There's one in attendance. Just give it a moment if they would like to speak to raise their hand. Thanks.
Okay. So moving next to mayor announcements, I have just a couple. First of all, you may have noticed we have Emma from Ward 8, who is with us sitting in the audience tonight. You may recall from an earlier discussion, she's going to basically be doing an internship with our city over the next several weeks. And she's been meeting with everyone from our city administrator to our municipal judge and our city prosecutor. And she's also going to be attending council meetings and planning and zoning commission meetings as part of her project and goals for her future. She's a junior at Eureka High School. And I just want to welcome you, Emma, to our team for however long you're going to be with us. And we're very glad to have you. All right. Next, I'm going to go down in front for this one. All right, so we have some other special guests. Would you all like to come up here with me this evening? So these are representatives from the Union Baptist Church of Chesterfield. Over here, which this is where we always do our recognition, which is actually in the city of Wildwood. And it's a wonderful church, actually. I haven't been there a couple of times myself. And they are just an integral part of our Wildwood community. And in addition to that, what's very special about that church and why they're here with us this evening is because they are getting ready to celebrate their 100-year anniversary. It's part of this. You're going to get your opportunity to do that because at our next council meeting, we're going to be doing a proclamation for them. And so we're going to be in the same spot. It's just going to be a little more formal and elaborate, but you just walk with me on that. All right. Okay. And then I'm going to go to their church and deliver that proclamation in person as well. So I want to be the first to congratulate you. And I know the council just thinks the world of you. And thanks for being part of our community. We're so glad for that. And I look forward to doing the proclamation at the next meeting and being at your church to do that. All right. All right.
We appreciate coming and sharing with you. Many of you, we probably voted for you in our district, but I didn't know you. But anyway, actually, the church is way over 100 years, and I just needed to make that announcement. We've probably been in existence for about 130 years, but we didn't get the deed, didn't everything over until 1921. So that's what we're celebrating, the 100 years that we've actually had a deed for the church. So we appreciate the time that you've given us today. Thank you, Mayor Bolden, for allowing us to come, and come on over. You'll enjoy the church. The church is, how many of you know where the church is? Okay, We're at the end of Church Road, you know that. Our pastor is Reverend Raymond Abernathy. So we invite you to come. Now, the mayor didn't give the date of the anniversary. It's the first Sunday in November, November 2nd, 7th. So come on over at 10:30 in the morning.
All right. And while we're on trivia, Doris plays the piano at the church, so. All right, we'll see you at the next meeting. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for being here. It does. Was a pleasant surprise. All right. We have no public hearings this evening. Moving into legislation, Bill 2645 is our only bill for second reading, and it's before the council for final passage. It concerns all wards. Is there a motion for the second reading of Bill 2645? Made by Councilmember Nyan, seconded by Councilmember Dodwell. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2645.
Bill 2645, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with Wilson Hydro LLC for the provision of professional services in support of the Watershed Erosion Task Force's efforts to begin the permitting process in association with 3 projects that will be required to obtain federal, state, and local agencies' approvals before construction, all of which have been identified as in critical need of repair. Second reading.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett, do you have anything further you'd like to mention relative to the bill?
No, sir, but I am available for any questions or comments.
Any questions for Joe or any comments from any member of the council relative to Bill 2645? Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2645.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo.
Yes. I said yes, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
sorry, I couldn't hear you. Councilmember McCutcheon. Yes. Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper.
Yes.
The bill passes. Moving next to our first readings, Bill 2646 is before the council, and it concerns several wards, wards 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Hopper, seconded by Councilmember McCutcheon. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2646.
Bill 2646, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute an amended contract with the United States Geological Survey, USGS, in the first year of a 2-year study of the Colts Creek watershed as part of the overall efforts of the city's Watershed Erosion Task Force, WETF, to develop environmentally appropriate and engineered solutions to ongoing concerns therein. First reading.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett, do you have anything you'd like to mention relative to Bill 2646?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just very briefly, this particular bill contains a contract that would be for reapproval. Reapproval is necessary given that the Rolla office had provided comments on our professional services agreement, which were incorporated into the bill in the final contract that was approved on August 23rd by City Council. The professional services agreement was then passed on to an administrator at a higher level, and they came back with additional changes that have been reviewed by the city attorney and accepted. And the changes were substantial enough, in the opinion of the department, that the contract needed to be reapproved by City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Farmer.
Yeah, Joe, I know when we passed this before, it's not a super time crunch, but I know that there's a little bit of a time frame. Do we need to do a second reading tonight?
If there is no objection from the mayor or city council, the department would respectfully request a second reading tonight.
You want to make that motion?
I do.
Okay, we have a motion for a second reading, seconded by Councilmember Brost. This will, as you know, take a 2/3 supermajority. For a second reading, we'll do that by voice vote and see where that goes. All in favor of the motion for second reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So we have the 2/3 requisite met. Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2646 a second time.
Bill 2646, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute an amended contract with the United States Geological Survey, USGS, in the first year of a 2-year study of the Colts Creek watershed as part of the overall efforts of the city's Watershed Erosion Task Force, WETF, to develop environmentally appropriate and engineered solutions to ongoing concerns therein. Second reading.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from any member of the council relative to the bill? Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2646.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nian,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi.
Yes.
Okay, the bill is passed. Moving next to Bill 2647, it's before the council also for first reading, and it concerns all wards. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Farmer. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Dodwell. All in favor of the motion for first reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2647.
Bill 2647, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending subsection A of section 105.040 of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Wildwood relating to filing procedures for municipal elections. First reading.
Thank you. And Ms. Eldridge, as a city clerk, would you like to mention anything about this?
John can correct me if needed, but this relates back to House Bill 271 that was passed by the state. And it is changing the filing date, the opening date for filing to the 17th Tuesday, and the closing date is the 14th Tuesday. And since our code had different dates, we need to change that just to be consistent with what state statute says.
I think that's an excellent description. Nothing to add from our city attorney. Okay, thank you so much. Any questions? All right, this will be on the council's agenda for the next meeting. Moving next to Bill 2648, it's also before the council for first reading, and it concerns Ward 2. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Ward 2. Made by Councilmember Eden, seconded by Councilmember Bartoni. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2648.
Bill 2648, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending ordinance number 2633 of the city of Wildwood, Missouri by deleting section 3 thereof in its entirety and replacing it in lieu thereof with a new section 3 and increasing the total authorized expenditure amount for the city contractor agreement with Gamma Tree Experts LLC for the fall 2021 tree planting project. First reading.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brown, do you have anything you'd like to mention relative to Bill 2648?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, I'll make it brief, but I did want to stress to the council that this is a no cost change order to our recently approved agreement with Gamma Tree. And this will, if passed, will allow us to respond to a request from the HOA at Chesterfield Valley and Valley View subdivisions to upgrade their trees and plant slightly larger trees at their request. So the additional costs will be reimbursed by the HOA. And with that, I'm available for any questions from the council.
Thank you, Councilmember Bartoni.
Rick, just because we are in tree planting season, is it necessary to have a second reading this evening?
Council member, I would certainly not oppose that if that's the council's desire. I think the contractor would appreciate that and have the clarity to move forward more quickly.
Since it is a no cost, I'll make a motion that we do have a second reading.
Okay, we have a motion for second reading, seconded by Councilmember Edens. Before we get to that motion, Councilmember Garitano, you had wanted to speak
I was going to ask.
Okay, all right, we got that accomplished. Any discussion on the motion for second reading? All right, 2/3 vote is required. We'll do by voice vote first and see where that goes. All in favor of the motion for second reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion for second reading carries. Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2648 a second time.
Bill 2648, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending ordinance number 2633 of the city of Wildwood, Missouri by deleting section 3 thereof in its entirety and replacing it in lieu thereof with a new section 3 and increasing the total authorized expenditure amount for the city contractor agreement with Gamma Tree Experts LLC for the fall 2021 tree planting project, second reading.
Thank you. Any further comments from the council or any questions from any member of the council relative to the bill? Okay, seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2648.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nian,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino.
Yes.
Okay, the bill is passed. Finally, moving to Bill 2649. This, as you may recall, arose out of our discussions a few meetings ago relative to providing the council with information relative to decisions by the Architectural Review Board and the ability to look at those decisions. And so the legislation you have before you, and I think I sent an email a few days ago on this, based on discussions with our city attorney as to the best approach. Those decisions would initially be reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission and ultimately by the council. I believe the only other material change is that the two liaisons on ARB, one of which is a council liaison appointed by this council, the other of which is appointed by Planning and Zoning Commission, would have the right to vote, whereas they currently do not. We thought that, and I hope you agree, that this is the best way to facilitate what we're all trying to do and yet keep that independence that's there. So if you're good with that, I would ask for a motion for the first reading of the bill. Made by Councilmember Galani, seconded by Councilmember Ottenberg. All in favor of the motion for first reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2649.
Bill 2649, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending section 415.220 of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Wildwood by deleting subsections D and F thereof in their entirety and enacting in lieu thereof new subsections D and F of section 415.220 and providing for the composition and procedures of the Architectural Review Board, first reading.
Thank you. City Attorney Young, do you have anything you want to add to what I mentioned earlier?
I have nothing to add, Mayor, but I'm available for questions.
Okay, Councilor McCutcheon.
Yeah, will you point out to me what section that highlights that the council liaison and the planning and zoning liaison has the right to vote? Because I read this multiple times and I can't seem to locate it.
City Attorney Young.
The changes that give them the authority to vote are in subsection on page, it'll be the second page of the document, where previously it expressly stated they did not have the right to vote. It now states that they are a member, which means they have the right to vote. So unless you expressly say they don't have the right to vote, any members of a board or commission have the right to vote.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Garitano.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to suggest if it's possible with the frequency of ARB being only monthly, we could do a second reading. I think these changes are good. It brings consistency with the way planning and zoning is and provides additional reviews. So I'd like to offer that.
Okay, we have a motion for second reading, seconded by Councilmember Ottenberg. This will take a 2/3 vote, which you now know from this evening, if not from any other meeting. We'll do voice vote and see where that goes. All in favor of the motion for second reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Before we have a second reading of it, I think I saw a hand, Councilor Bertolino.
Yeah, just a curiosity question. Do the current members of the Architectural Review Board, are they aware of this ordinance change, and have you had any feedback from them?
I have not personally talked with members of the ARB about this. Based on the fact that I visited with them relative to their appointments and many of them recently, I don't know of any reason why they would have an issue with it.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Edens.
I read this, but I may have missed it. When we do the ARB voting liaison, is it the same nomination process and voting by council that we do for planning and zoning, and it's a 1-year term?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you for that question. Okay. Please read, Ms. Eldridge, the bill for a second time. 2649.
Bill 2649, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending section 415.220 of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Wildwood by deleting subsections D and F thereof in their entirety and enacting in lieu thereof new subsections C and F of section 415.220 and providing for the composition and procedures of the Architectural Review Board, second reading.
And we did do a vote for the second reading, right? Yeah, we did. Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2649.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Councilmember Bros.
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano.
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher.
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo.
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Galani.
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper.
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi.
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino.
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Yes.
Okay, the bill passes. Thank you. Finally, moving to resolutions, we have one resolution 2021-24. It's before the council. It concerns all wards. Is there a motion to adopt resolution 2021-24? Made by Councilmember McCutcheon, seconded by Councilmember Ottenberg. Ms. Eldridge, please read the resolution.
Resolution 2021-24, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with Minkoff Studio to complete the reformatting changes to the Wildwood History Book, which will accommodate its final publication.
Thank you. Mr. Benich, anything you'd like to mention relative to that? The resolution.
Yes, pardon me. Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I may. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, since 2015, the Historic Preservation Commission and many of the liaisons from City Council have been working on a history book that is now complete. In its completed form, it is over 500 pages. All the publishers that we've contacted about taking the draft and making it a final publication have said it's too long. And so this would be an opportunity for Minkoff Studio to basically reformat it, reduce the number of pages, and also edit it to a final form. If there are any questions, the department's available. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Mr. Benich or anyone else, or any comments? Councilor Rambo.
Yeah, Joe, is the draft available for us to check out ahead of time?
Certainly, we've been publishing the chapters each year as they were completed. In 2019, we had all four of the chapters complete. We did provide the 5th chapter that was not part of the book, but yes, I can provide you. I'll have to figure out a good way to do it. It's a large publication, obviously,
Right.
but yes, certainly I can.
And I have limited bandwidth, so it'll have to. Thanks.
Certainly.
Any
sir.
other comments or questions? Seeing nothing further, all in favor of the motion to adopt resolution 2021-24, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. Finally, moving to the consent agenda, we have one item, the approval of expenditures. If there are no comments or questions, I would ask for a motion to approve the expenditures as presented. Made by Councilmember Galani, seconded by Councilmember Brost. Any discussion on the motion to approve the expenditures as presented? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right, that takes us to miscellaneous. Anything anyone would like to mention under miscellaneous? Councilmember Dodwell.
Just real quickly, I wanted to double check to see how soon you think we'll be moving forward with any contract for implementing the rural internet and then providing similar services to the rest of the city.
That is, I'm going to give my best guess to that. I would say in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Reasonable, city attorney, city administrator? I'm sorry, okay, 1 to 2 weeks. If I overshot it there.
I would just like to
Did you-
ensure that we get it done before the end of this fiscal year.
That's what we're shooting for, Councilmember.
And thank you for the question. I would mention that the city administrator is doing an update for the ward members from 1 and 6 in particular, along with Chair Rick Hollis from the Internet Access Committee. And that's occurring in the coming Thursday. So just FYI on that. All right, thanks for the question. Councilmember Garetano.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I want to make a correction. So I guess this would be a point of information on my point of information. When I stated the Wildwood portion of the sales tax, I said 1.5%, but City Administrator Cross pointed out something to me. That 1.5 includes 1%, which is the Community Improvement District, which is just a small portion of town center. And actually, the Community Improvement District will cease probably sometime in 2026 once the bonds are paid off. So we will not be collecting that 1%. And that 1% does not come to the city. It goes to the Community Improvement District. So the city actually only has a 0.5% sales tax. So that's my point of information. So good news too, because that 1% in that small section here of town center will go away in 2026.
Thank you for your point of information on your point of information. All right, Councilmember Edens.
Okay, on a lighter note, because we've had a very successful agenda, I am formally challenging all of you guys to get out your best ugly, tacky holiday garb for our December meeting. And you're on earlier notice because the supply chain is a bit odd. So you may need to shop earlier and make sure you have all of the textures, that are appropriately important, such as sequins or velvet. And there were some very, very classy bow ties. And I'd like to thank former council member Ken Remy for showing up in a full holiday suit. And so I expect that his tradition is carried on in mine as well.
Councilmember Edens, I'm a little surprised you did that, given that you had the same challenge for the parade at Celebration and your float came in last.
Your nose is getting so long. Oh my gosh,
that's
you
not
gotta
true.
push it back in.
It was a gorgeous golf.
Why, thank you. Why, thank you.
Very well done. And she took a lot of time on it. All right. Anything else that Councilmember Clark?
Yeah, I would still like, if Mr. Brown could provide for me, I would still like to have a rendering or a picture or something of the Basie T work shelter. I don't remember what it's called. That's going to go in over on Old Wild Horse Creek Road, so that I can let the residents know what it's going to look like. They did put up the chain across the driveway there and a lock on it. The chain is, I could probably break it with my hands. It's so small, but they did hang something across there. It doesn't look very pretty. And that's what those people have to look at every time they come out their front door.
Okay.
Just FYI. And if we could get something so that we can tell them what it's going to look like. They have imagined in their head that it's going to be terrible.
So without objection, we'll have our city administrator work with our director of public works, and he'll get that to you and the rest of the council, just FYI for everyone. Anything else under miscellaneous? All right, seeing none, I would ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting of the council. Made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember Clark. Non-debatable motion. All in favor of the motion to adjourn, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?